Big Manny Studios presents an almost original production. Big Manny 6, Criminal Manny. Big Manny by JessicaChrist. Written and illustrated by JessicaChrist. Narrated by JessicaChrist. With special guests Siôn-Anthony, Cienna, Chelsie, and Alfie Thomas. It's early in the morning, on the 27th of January, 2080. Emmanuel Manny Heffely III is a very normal size for someone in an almost 5-year-old body. He is currently bawling his eyes out in the back of an FBI van between his old neighbor Rick Sanchez and an FBI soldier. Manny has been crying for quite a few hours now, as his best friend Obama had passed away earlier that morning. The van keeps driving and passes a small wooden sign reading Fair Bureaucracy Incorporated Base. Right as they pass it, the FBI soldier finally speaks.
Okay, boys, once you're in and you're put on our database, you'll get one phone call, so make it count. Then at some point tomorrow, you'll have your own separate court cases.
Manny, still crying, mumbles, "I don't have anyone left alive to call. I'll need a good lawyer, though. I guess I better call Saul." They arrive at the FBI base and are rushed inside. Rick and Manny are both processed and booked in, as every last detail about them is logged onto the system. After their capitally invasive entrance, the two are given some time to breathe. Manny takes his phone call now and types in the number for his new lawyer. Is this Saul Goodman?" Manny asks cautiously. "Because I was out partying, minding my own business, and now I need a lawyer. Can you help?" Saul Goodman is the old reliable when it comes to lawyers. He's been around for as long as anyone remembers, and he never turns down a case. He'll fight for your rights, which he'll remind everyone they have. He sat in his large office between two marble pillars, behind his very expensive Cocobolo desk. Saul looks at the photo in front of him. It's a picture of his late friend, Luca Gaddis. Just then, the phone rings, and he listens to what is being said. Then he replies in his upbeat lawyer voice. Of course I can help. I never turn down a case. Can I get your name?" The man on the other end answers. "I'm Manny Heffely." Saul's tone switches immediately, as he understands what to do if a Mr. Heffely requires his legal services. He responds to Manny. "Manny Heffely? As in, the Manny Heffely? I knew this day would come. Sir, it's finally time to do what was trusted with me all those years ago." Sometime later, Saul Goodman arrives at the FBI base to meet his most important client. Manny is moved to a dark interrogation room where he's questioned by FBI soldiers, but Manny doesn't say a word until his lawyer arrives. Just then, Saul Goodman bursts through the door and demands the soldiers leave for a private meeting with his client. As the soldiers leave, Saul takes a seat and pulls out the Manny file, incomplete edition, from his briefcase. It seems this was something he already owned. He flicked through the pages and tries not to react to what he's reading, and begins to speak. "Well, hello, Mr. Heffely. I'm Saul Goodman, and let me just say what an honor it is to finally meet you. But, I've been reading your file, and it's a lot. Not that that's a bad thing. We've all done stuff we regret, but I think I should say up front that there's no way in hell you're making it out of this as a free man. Everyone on Earth knows who you are, and you weren't exactly discreet about some of the stuff you did. However, the incident from last month on Pluto, I think we have some leg room, you know? My first thought was to simply blame all of your misdeeds on being intoxicated, and the worst you'd have is a couple months in rehab." He pauses for a moment, and Manny gets a sentence in. Yeah, I guess I could do rehab. I mean, I'm fully off the space heroin now, so it's just the alcohol I'd be there for. Saul continues to speak like Manny hadn't said anything. However, the file I have here says during the Pluto incident, you had been sober for roughly 13 hours due to a recent plane crash. Excuse me. And we don't want to get caught in a lie. So my second thought was the only way you could possibly get away with this is if you plead insanity. Just do that, and the judge will have no choice but to send you to a nice, comfy mental hospital for at most a year, I'd say. I hear the Asylum Demon's Home for the Mentally Insane has space. How does that sound, huh? Manny rubs his baggy, sleep-deprived eyes as he thinks about Saul's offer. Then he says, I am known for being pretty crazy. I'm sure the judge will buy it, but the jury could be a little more tricky. And I don't mind living in an insane asylum for a while. Saul gives a big smile and replies, Perfect. Just wait until the trial tomorrow, and I know we can win this. After Saul left, Manny spent the night in the FBI base. Cold and alone, he sat up and relives his traumatic day over and over in his mind. His best friend had died. Obama had died. And now Manny has no one left. Eventually, the sun comes up, and at 6 a.m, Saul Goodman returns to Manny with a grey blazer and a red tie. Manny puts it on over his regular white shirt. Then, soon after, they're shoved in an FBI van and drive to the Luca Memorial Courthouse. Saul takes a large drink from his coffee and excitingly says, You know, Manny, I really think we've got this. Manny is far less confident and struggles to even keep his eyes open. He murmurs, I hope so. They park outside the courthouse and pass a marble statue of Luca Gaddis. Saul puts his hand on the statue's shoe to pay his respects. Saul and Manny enter their courtroom to find everyone already inside and waiting for them to arrive. In an awkward silence, Manny and his lawyer sit at the defendant's desk and wait for the judge to speak. Judge Bot Judy is the current Supreme Court Justice of America. There is only ever one at a time, and they only work on the most important cases in the country. And since she started 4 years ago, she's aired the trials to the world live on TV. Judge Judy reads her notes aloud. Now presenting trial of a lifetime, Emmanuel Manny Heffely III versus potentially every current living being. Mr. Heffely will be represented by Saul Goodman, and every living being is represented by Patricia Shihulk. One of the many cameras around the room zooms in on Judge Judy's face, and she continues to read her notes to the live audience at home. Now, before these two lawyers debate our ears off for hours, I shall relay the facts of this case. Mr. Heffely, you are being charged with use of a Class S drug, cannibalization of 4 family members, murder of over 1,000 Boston residents, 2 counts of attempted assassination of an ex-president, 2 counts of enslaving the entire population of Earth, the ordered death of 12 million people, destruction of the Twin Towers 2 that killed over 200 identical scientists, assassination of 2 Obama generals, starting multiple wars, murder of 1 million robots, theft of a historically important car, owning 1 billion unlicensed firearms in the United Kingdom, assisted drunk flying, multiple counts of breaking and entering, the murder of 68 Plutonians, murder of a fireman, blackmail, armed robbery, unpaid medical bills, and 40 years' worth of tax fraud. How do you plead? The courtroom becomes silent as they await Manny's answer. He stands up on his desk so all the cameras can see him. He takes a deep breath and shouts, I plead insanity. The entire jury gasped. This is a huge development for everyone watching. If it was true that the man who was in charge of essentially the entire planet was completely insane, then a majority of the last 55 years of history were completely wasted. Judge Judy raised an eyebrow at Manny's statement, and she responds, Well, Mr. Heffley, if you can prove these claims of yours, I'm willing to dismiss your case completely. Manny's eyes dart left to right as he tries to think of something that proves he's insane.
Would a sane person do this?
He yells as he swings his arm around to smack Saul's coffee cup off of the table, where it hits the hardwood ground with a thud and breaks in half, spilling hot coffee all around. Judge Judy's eyebrow gets higher and higher, and she begins to shout.
Inconclusive. The trial will continue. Miss Shihulk, please begin.
Patricia Shihulk was born and raised in the city Ra-Syro on Pluto. She was about middle-aged for a Plutonian and very passionate about the law. This case she was on is something she was very passionate about. She lost a close friend in the incident at R&R Malem last month. She knew it was Manny, and she wanted him to pay for what he did. So she spent hours and hours and days of her life researching everything she could about Manny's life. The Plutonian began her rebuttal.
Your Honour, I'm very surprised that Mr. Heffely claims himself to be medically insane since...
She pauses for dramatic effect.
He has a certificate proving he's completely insane.
Patricia pulls out a large piece of card that very clearly says, in large cursive writing, "By the power of the United States of America and the Luca Memorial Hospital, hereby declares Emmanuel Heffely to not have donkey brains." The certificate has the printed and forged signature of the late Luca Gaddis, but also has the real signature of the head scientist at the time for both the Luca Memorial Hospital and the Obamacare Hospital, Dr. Elisha Fuggle. The date on the bottom is the 13th of April, 2023, back when Manny was only 1 year old. The jury gasps in shock. One juror, whose name was Peter Griffin, screamed out all of his bottled-up pain.
He killed my brother, Brian Griffin.
Manny looked concerned. He'd completely forgotten that he was admitted to a mental hospital around the time he turned 1. And a few months after that, he'd been officially disregarded as completely sane. Judge Judy writes something down and begins talking.
If there's nothing else you want to add, Mr. Goodman, we'll decide our final ruling.
Saul looks in his briefcase and shuffles around inside while rambling.
You see, Your Honor,
no. Then Manny stands up on his desk once again and clears his throat to speak into the cameras.
Your Honor, jury, people watching at home, I'm really sorry.
Suddenly, around the world, almost everyone felt a huge weight lift. A lot of them didn't know it, but all they really wanted was an apology from Manny. After everything he did, it's the least he could do. Everyone in the courtroom and at home let out an "aww," and even Peter Griffin said,
I forgive you, Manny. I love you.
Judge Judy puts her hand to her heart and whispers,
Oh my.
A few minutes later, in the decision room, the jury is whispering in a huddle, discussing whether to go with innocent or guilty. Eventually, they come back to the courtroom and Judge Judy scutters over on her robot spider legs, and one juror whispers their decision to her. Judge Judy makes her way back to her judge desk and speaks to the room.
Since you apologize, Mr. Heffely, me and the jury have decided that you are not guilty.
Manny and Saul jump with joy, cheering and dancing. It was finally over, and Manny would be a free man once again. But just before Judge Judy could smack her gavel to make it official, Patricia Shihulk screamed,
Objection!
And Judge Judy, curious on what she could possibly say now, allows her to continue. Miss Shihulk puts her notes down to go off script, to deliver a message from her heart.
Your Honour, as someone very closely and recently affected by the tyrant that is Manny Heffely, I can truly see why a person could hate this very small man. I mean, we have mountains of evidence that he is murdered and such. It's like putting War Oderman on trial. Everyone knows what he's done because it's now part of our history. However, I can tell Mr. Heffley's apology was felt in all of us, so I can't in good conscience represent the plaintiff on this case. Please let Manny go.
Judge Judy thinks about this and says under her breath, "Wow, no way." The jury all repeat the same phrases of wow and no way. Judy writes on some paper, then scribbles it out. She looks around the room, then right into a camera, then back at Patricia Shihulk. She speaks. "Well now, Mrs. Shihulk, that speech was very touching, and you're certainly right that Mr. Heffley should be innocent after an apology like that. However, you did also say that he did do the crimes he's being charged with, and unfortunately, the law does not simply take apologies, so I will have to disregard the jury's vote and give my final verdict." Manny, still hopeful, crosses his fingers and whispers under his breath over and over, "Please, please, 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 please." But Saul Goodman was very pessimistic as he leans his head in both of his hands, whispering, "It was all for nothing. Luca, Jaden, I failed you both." Judge Judy continues, "Manny Heffley, you are guilty on all charges." Gasps are heard around the room. "He will be facing a strict sentence of 500 billion years and 6 months, with a fine to the American government of $50. Her gavel hits the table to make it official. Saul Goodman's head hits the table and he doesn't get up. Patricia Shihulk says to herself,
Oh, I wanted him to win. Well, at least I get paid extra for winning.
Manny is grabbed by FBI soldiers and is slowly dragged out of the room. And as he leaves, he says, "And on my birthday and everything." As people start to leave, Judge Judy quickly remembers something and speaks up. "And Saul Goodman will get 86 years for links to the murder of..." The doors to the courtroom slam shut as Manny is put in handcuffs and pushed into the back of another FBI van. Manny sits in silence, preparing himself for the next 500 billion years he'll spend behind bars. Obviously he'll die much before then, but Manny wasn't ready to accept that just yet. He still needs to wrap his head around spending life in a box with hardened criminals. Sure, Manny has done bad stuff, but he's not like them, is he? A few hours of driving, they finally arrive in Louisiana, the state with the largest and most dangerous prison in the world. Big Prison. Manny is ushered inside by the guard and scanned through the reception over to the prisoner's entrance. Something he noticed on his way through is that the FBI soldiers here have large gun-brand shotguns slung around their necks. He hoped he'd never see them used. They make it to a conveyor belt, and the FBI soldier with him says,
Step on the belt and don't move. It will do everything for you.
Manny obeys the man and cautiously steps onto the conveyor. Suddenly, it jolts to life, and slowly he's moved down the room. As he goes under a vent, it sucks all the clothes off him and puts them in prisoner storage. Then he travels further down to another vent that whomps the uniform onto him, brown shoes and an orange jumpsuit with the words "Prisoner 4625" printed on it. He continues along to a small robotic arm holding a pair of scissors that hovers over Manny's head for a second before slicing all 3 of Manny's hairs in half. Manny now had the closest thing to a buzz cut as he could get, and he really hated it. But before Manny could protest, someone very powerful walked in. A man with the biggest, most muscular arms Manny had ever seen, slowly stepping over, flashing a smile to everyone he saw. As he got closer, he flipped off his sunglasses and held them tight in his hand. He looked at Manny in the eyes and speaks in his smooth, calm tone.
Well, well, well. Are my eyes playing tricks on me, or is that Manny Heffley? I've got to say, you're a lot smaller than I expected.
After Manny's traumatic experience with a haircut, his mood has suddenly become a complete disinterest to his situation. He replies to the man in an annoyed tone. "Yeah, I get that a lot.
Who are you exactly?
The man laughs and gives another classic smile.
I'm Alfie Thomas, the warden in this beautiful prison you're staying in. And let's just say, I'm a big meanie. Hey, that kind of sounds like Manny. I'll call you Big Manny.
Alfie Thomas slaps Manny on the shoulder and keeps talking.
I'll walk you to your cell, then tomorrow you'll start your new life.
He gives a wink and walks confidently past a sign that says, Cell Block 1. Manny is pushed along by a guard behind him. Sometime later, they had arrived at Cell Block 2275, and Manny really understood why they called it Big Prison. Alfie Thomas banged on the thick bars of the cells with the back of his knuckle. There is some movement in the dark room. Alfie says,
Here's your new home, Big Manny. I hope you like it because you'll be here for a long, long time.
Manny doesn't answer and just stares into his prison cell, trying to see what is inside. The FBI soldier gets out a ring of keys and unlocks the cell with a click, then unlocks Manny's handcuffs with a cha-chick. The cell door is swung open and Manny is pushed inside, but before he can even turn around, the door is slammed shut with a loud crash, and Manny is stood in the dark, scared. Manny puts his arms out to see if he can find anything. There's some shuffling and scuffling around him. It seems there's someone or something else in here. Manny stumbles over to the left wall and whispers nervously, "Where's the light?" His hand brushes over a light switch and he presses the button, turning the lights on. Suddenly, Manny could see countless scratches in the stone walls of the cell. Each scratch was another day that someone had been in Big Prison. Between all the sets of 5 scratches were huge letters spelling, "Let me out." Manny looked around the eerie room until he saw his cellmate, a lanky, animal-like man huddled in the corner, sat on a pile of stolen items and his own filth. The man's name was Finlay Hardon, and he was in the prison for being a very bad guy. Manny screams when he sees him, but Finlay didn't care and whispers to himself,
No way.
Suddenly, Finlay leaps at Manny, laughing manically and drooling excessively. Manny falls back and Finlay pins him to the wall. Manny screams,
Hey, no, get off me. Get away.
but Finlay doesn't listen and shouts to himself,
I can't believe they gave me a kid. I'm gonna kill him. Yes.
Just then, a huge shadow engulfed both of them. It was a silhouette of a man that towered high above them and almost scraped his head on the ceiling. The silhouette speaks.
You know he's almost 60, right?
Finlay turns his head towards the shadow man and stutters.
What?
In a second, the silhouette swings his arm at Finlay and punches him in the head, where he flies across the room, hitting the wall and collapsing in his filth pile. Manny let out a deep breath and stares at the yellow man in front of him. Then the man crouched down to speak to Manny.
It's okay, Manny. He should be out for a while. Anyway, I'm Homer O.J. Simpson. I know what it's like to be put in prison for a stupid reason, so I'm here to help.
Manny looks relieved, but confused by what Homer said, he replied,
Yeah, thank you so much. That could have been really bad. But, I wouldn't say I'm here for a stupid reason. Anyway, do you know what I'm supposed to do now?
Homer had been in Big Prison for just over a year now, so already knew where to go. He answers,
It's 8 o'clock, so we have evening yard time. I'll take you to the yard and introduce you to everyone.
He picks up Manny and puts him between his arms, then continues to speak.
By the way, I didn't kill my husband, if anybody tells you that I did, 'cause I didn't.
Manny and Homer walk through the hundreds of hallways and staircases down to the prisoner's yard entrance. Eventually, they make it out to the yard and see some of the most dangerous people in the world, all huddled around benches in individual gangs. Homer puts Manny down and explains how the gangs work.
So, Manny, if you want to survive here, you'll need to join a gang. We have 3 major gangs which to join. The Insanity Gang, the Innocent Gang, and the Child Murder Gang. If you don't want to join any of these, then you'll become a loner. And no one wants to be a loner.
The gangs each had hundreds of members, but only the important ones are about to be listed. In the Insanity Gang, there is Leah Schur, Shyla Owens, Adam Sandler, and Manny's neighbor, Rick Sanchez, who was recently sentenced to 25 to life in big prison. In the Innocent Gang, Homer O.J. Simpson is in charge. In the Child Murder Gang, there is Jeff Epstein, Jimmy Savage, William Isaac, and if he wasn't passed out on Manny's floor, Finlay Hardon. And finally, in the Loners, there was Bill Cosby and Saul Goodman, who was now on his third name change, being Gene Tekovic. Manny looks across at his options and says to Homer,
I don't know, Homer. This is a lot to take in, and I'm so tired after the last few days. I'll decide tomorrow, but thanks for the help.
Manny begins to walk to the entrance back into the main prison. During all of this, Alfie Thomas stands on the high wall, wearing his sunglasses, looking over his prisoners, walking back and forth past the giant gun-brand sniper cannon that he has so desperately wanted to fire at all of the criminals down below. He cracks his huge knuckles to intimidate both the prisoners but also the guards. Everyone knew not to mess with the warden, Alfie Thomas. Manny goes back to cell block 2275 and climbs onto the top bunk and waits a few hours. Eventually, Finlay Hardon wakes up and promises that no one in the Child Murder Gang will mess with him. Finlay then crawls over to his filth pile and gets ready for sleeping. Eventually, over the speakers, an FBI soldier screams,
Lights out!
As the lights automatically turn off, indicating the end of Manny's first day in prison. 34 years later, Manny is awoken early in the morning by a loud siren. This alarm sounds more serious than normal as it blares.
Alarm! Riot in progress!
Manny gets down from his bed and rubs his eyes and his dark grey beard, sleepily murmuring, "Oh, what's going on?" Manny was now in his early 90s, but in the body of a 39-year-old. He was now taller than most people and was in very good shape. He walks past Finlay Hardon, who's never looked worse. Manny pushes open his cell door to see what's happening. There were bullet holes in the walls and bodies scattered everywhere. Some of the bullets had destroyed the plants Manny had put around the prison after forming the Reform Gang. The alarm continued to scream.
Alarm! All guards to the rec yard! Alarm! Alarm!
Manny walks cautiously through the destruction and says to himself,
I didn't think they'd actually do this. The plan was made so long ago.
He steps around more mangled corpses and makes it to the prisoner's yard entrance. Manny bursts through the door, careful of what could be out there. The best way to describe what he could see was a war zone. His prison friends fighting his prison enemies, fighting the prison guards, every person for themselves. Manny ran around the crushed puddle that was Jimmy Savage. Up above, Bill Cosby is killed by an FBI soldier holding a shotgun. The early morning sky is a light purple, and it's pouring with rain. Suddenly, Zeus himself screams,
Thunder! Lightning!
as a bolt of lightning lights up the sky, revealing Alfie Thomas, looking as young and muscular as ever, staring at Manny. Alfie Thomas roars at the top of his lungs.
I see Big Manny. He must have organised this. Move out my way.
He pushes the guard holding the sniper cannon away and takes hold of the controls. He looks down the scope until he sees Manny. He makes sure he lines up his shot with Manny's head and pulls the trigger. Bang! The blue bullet flies through the air at blinding speeds. Manny hears a voice scream,
Big Manny, watch out!
but Manny doesn't hear and just says,
Huh? What?
and the bullet blows a chunk of Manny's brain onto the wall behind him. Manny stays standing for just a second and looks around. His ears are ringing as blood covers his eyes. Then he falls on his back, dead. Manny Heffely was dead. Big Manny was dead. Small Manny was dead. Manny is dead. Meanwhile, Rick Sanchez and the Insanity Gang are up on the high wall above the yard. Rick looks at Manny's body and yells,
Manny is dead. Start phase 3.
As Rick says this, Adam Sandler grabs the only living FBI soldier around and puts a knife to his throat. At the same time, Leah Shaw and Shyla Owens surround Alfie Thomas with knives as well. Alfie Thomas shouts at them.
Get away from me.
Rick pulls out a gun he's been hiding somewhere for over 30 years and calmly asks, "Any last words, Warden?" And Alfie Thomas tries to get away, but is stabbed in the arm and he screams,
Taylor Johnson. I'm sorry for everything. I did it all for you.
Rick pulls the trigger and bang. To be continued. And that's Big Manny 6, another big section of the Big Manny world. What will happen next now our protagonist is dead? You'll have to wait and see. I hope you notice the improvement in art quality, and it only gets better from here. But I'm very sorry for how long this video is. I was going for 25 minutes, but the script got out of hand, and I'll be honest, the next one is probably just as long. Also, I want to explain how I've recently changed my name to Jessica. However, for lore reasons, the narrator and creator will still be JessicaChrist. For now, wink. If you liked this, then please subscribe. I'd really appreciate that. Bye.